The United States has finally shown its fangs. With the rapid rise of China in all aspects, the gap between economic and technological fields and the United States is becoming smaller and smaller. However, TSMC, which has advanced technology, looks down on Morris Chang in Chinese mainland, even sarcastically stating that, even if China provides 1 trillion yuan, nor can we create our own domestically produced chips. 2002. TSMC established the first wafer foundry in the United States. But high-end craftsmanship did not enter the United States. To reduce trouble, the United States has been producing chips in recent years, diversification of industries to Southeast Asian and other countries for substitution. But this also deprived the United States of its ability to manufacture chips. Now, the United States can only rely on TSMC to achieve 7nm and 5nm chips. The same goes for Intel and Huawei. But being controlled by others is not an American style. In order to further master the advanced technology of TSMC, the Biden administration signed the CHIP bill, threatening and luring numerous semiconductor giants such as TSMC and Samsung to build factories in the United States, promised them high subsidies. In order to win the big cake in the North American market, TSMC is finally looking forward to building a factory in the United States. But as time goes by, the United States promises to provide $50 billion in factory subsidies, delayed payment. Besides, the cost of building a factory in the United States far exceeds that of the TSMC CHIP Act. There are also a large number of binding conditions and domineering clauses, even demanding that TSMC not maintain cooperation with China for various reasons. Otherwise, not only will they not receive subsidies, still subject to US sanctions. At this point, TSMC only realized that it had been sold. Between the Biden administration and the Tsai administration in the United States, jointly manipulating chip foundry company TSMC, which has almost been renamed Meiji Electric, has recently reported several serious adverse news to its business situation. The Taiwanese enterprise has entered a situation of severe losses. Bankruptcy is not impossible. TSMC's establishment of a factory in the United States has exposed 2 unfavorable news stories with significant setbacks. First message. TSMC's upstream raw material supply chain manufacturers dare not go to the United States to build factories. After, even if TSMC builds factories in the United States, just like a skillful woman cannot cook without rice. Difficulty in starting production of high-end chips, according to a recent report by the Wall Street Journal in the United States. TSMC's raw material supplier, Li Changrong Chemical, had planned to follow in TSMC's footsteps by setting up factories in the United States. But Li Changrong, CEO of chemical industry, Li Mowei, revealed the truth during an interview, claiming that the dual taxation issue between Taiwan and the United States is a significant obstacle for Taiwanese investment. The United States has no intention of changing this situation. The strict taxation situation in the United States is unique in the world. As long as we have a factory and a company in the United States, then the Internal Revenue Service will determine that the enterprise is a U.S. enterprise. Not only does it require taxation of business in the U.S. market, and its global business must also pay taxes. Otherwise, the punishment may be light or heavy. If it's important, the company manager will be directly arrested and imprisoned. The director of the Internal Revenue Service, who was sentenced to 10 or 8 years, proudly declared that the department receives $1 of government funding, can refund the government a tax return of $127. Ranked first globally in terms of fund utilization and return rate, its strict tax collection ability is evident. Taiwanese enterprises are setting up factories in the United States, and the sheep are entering the tiger's mouth. Despite such strict tax regulations. But of course, domestic large enterprises in the United States have various ways to avoid taxes reasonably. But it is not suitable for Taiwanese companies to set up factories in the United States, because these foreigners can't compete with the Internal Revenue Service. We need to report to both the US and Taiwan authorities at the same time. Many suppliers at TSMC are getting stuck in this joint and don't know what to do. It is impossible to expect the Tsai administration to help numerous computers solve US tax issues. Because the Tsai administration itself is a comprador government that sells the interests of the Taiwanese people. How dare the government dare to challenge the Arizona factory being built by TSMC? And the Taiwanese authorities will also not give up collecting taxes on Taiwanese companies that set up factories in the United States. Otherwise, Tsai Ing-wen will eat and drink whatever she wants. How to buy American arms? TSMC was tricked into setting up a factory in the United States at the invitation of the Biden administration. Although we have almost no access to the huge chip subsidies promised by the US government. But it is still possible to obtain tax reduction policies for a certain period of time. But those upstream and downstream Taiwan machine manufacturers that revolve around TSMC do not have such treatment at all. When they learn that they were going to set up a factory in the United States, will be taxed at both ends. It's already starting to retreat. In this situation, TSMC's new Arizona plant will lack complete raw materials. Difficulty in ensuring production in the supply chain. Despite the Biden administration's recent decision to expand the scope of subsidies. But at present, the United States Department of Commerce only confirms that chip suppliers will apply for subsidies in the autumn. No details have been disclosed. Before the policy boots landed, Taiwanese enterprises remain stagnant. So this leads to the second serious unfavorable news for TSMC. According to Taiwanese media reports, TSMC's losses this year are terrifying. The pre-tax loss for the first 5 months of 2023 has exceeded $150 billion. If we add $267.5 billion in blood loss in 2022 and a full-year loss in 2023, the number of losses bound to exceed $500 billion is so high that everyone is gloomy about the prospects of this company. There are 3 main reasons for TSMC's huge losses. First, since Morris Chang decided to comply with the US ban on China on September 14, 2020. Stop original equipment manufacturer of Huawei chips. Its mainland business has been deteriorating. From the moment we decided to stop OEM of Huawei chips, Morris Chang began to follow the United States and went black. Huawei phones used to compete with Apple phones in the United States. Chip orders based on TSMC are as numerous as snowflakes. But TSMC voluntarily abandoned this major customer. Basically, it's like breaking one's arm. And it also received overall distrust from all mobile phones in mainland China. Its goodwill and economic losses are difficult to estimate. Second, the global electronic consumer market is becoming saturated, and the demand for users to replace mobile phones is slowing down, causing accelerated shrinkage of the chip foundry market. JPMorgan Chase in the United States just lowered TSMC's profit forecast. Expected revenue in USD for 2023, at least 8% year-on-year decline. Third, TSMC faces numerous difficulties in setting up new factories in the United States. Spending money like flowing water can't stop. Estimated investment amount of $15 billion in the early stage. Actually, it has gradually increased to a scale of $43.5 billion US. Not only has the supply chain become a major issue now, the progress of recruiting engineers and workers in the United States is also severely lagging behind. Morris Chang, founder of TSMC, has repeatedly made it clear that he seriously underestimated the difficulty of building a factory in the United States. There is a risk of being looted when building a factory in India. Building a factory in the United States cannot stop the cost at all. Morris Chang has encountered serious acclimatization in building a factory in the United States, causing huge losses for the enterprise. Perhaps it won't be long before we stand on the brink of bankruptcy. And on May 6 this year, Democratic Representative Morton recently proposed at a think tank seminar. Once China decides to invade Taiwan, so the United States will not hesitate to blow up TSMC. This has angered the public. Some people satirize that the United States has always thought of itself as the owner of the earth. 1 yuan can make you arrogant to this point. How does education in the United States teach students? In fact, the statement about blowing up TSMC, it has already appeared in 2021. At that time, the United States Army War College published relevant articles. Former U.S. National Security Advisor O'Brien also stated at the Dubai Forum in March this year, if a conflict breaks out, to avoid TSMC falling into Chinese hands, the United States will choose to blow up factories. This is the American style. Faced with such an absurd death threat, now TSMC is in a dilemma. The end of the makeup shift has already been highlighted. If we move to the United States, we will be uprooted with no hair left. From the results, it can be seen that the issue of US subsidies has already fallen through, and the reason why they deceived TSMC, Samsung and other companies travel to the United States. Because the United States does not have an industrial chain and corresponding talent, and these enterprises building factories can not only solve regional employment problems, can also cultivate talents that belong to the United States itself. Previously, Morris Chang claimed that China could not produce domestic chips with 1 billion yuan, but what about the results? China not only has the ability to manufacture domestically produced Godson chip processors, already able to produce chips of 14 nanometers. The end market has been able to meet the needs of high precision and cutting-edge technology, although there are technical barriers, but breaking it is only a matter of time. If China is difficult, it will be difficult for a while, but TSMC couldn't handle it properly. The direct person is gone. As a Chinese person, but did not contribute to national unity. On the contrary, kneeling and licking the fate of the United States is also due to one's own fault.